Good morning, everyone. Today is our annual poetry service, which is always an interesting service of different congregants sharing their favorite poems, as well as a little bit about themselves. And I started thinking about this service, particularly when Stephen Cunliffe was talking about being inspired to write poetry at his first service at QUUF. And so I started thinking about the different inspirations we have for poetry and what makes a poem. And it made me think of this story, Daniel Finds a Poem by Micha Archer. So please enjoy. Daniel knows all the rocks, trees, and animals in the park. But on Monday morning, Daniel sees something new in the park gate. A sign reads, "Poetry in the Park Sunday at 6 p.m. What is poetry? Daniel asks. To his surprise, he looks up when he hears a spider say, "To me, poetry is when morning dew glistens." On Tuesday, Daniel climbs the old oak tree and he sees a squirrel. "Squirrel, do you know what poetry is?" "Poetry is when crisp leaves crunch," Squirrel tells him. On Wednesday, Daniel calls into the chipmunk's hole, "Chipmunk, can you tell me when poetry is?" Poetry is when you have a home with many windows and an old stone wall. On Thursday, Daniel makes a boat with a leaf for a sail and watches the wind carry it across the pond. He calls quietly to Frog. "Excuse me, Frog, what is poetry?" "Poetry," says Frog, "is a cool pool to dive into." On Friday, Daniel parts the cattails and finds Turtle. "Hello, Turtle. I have a question. Do you know what poetry is?" "I think poetry is sun-warmed sand," Turtle says. On Saturday afternoon, Daniel finds Cricket in the shade of the slide. And when the shadows are long, Cricket fills the air with music. Is this poetry to you, Cricket? Singing at twilight when day is done, indeed it is, Daniel. That night, moonlight fills Daniel's room, and he hears a "ooh." Leaning from his window, he calls to Owl, "Owl, what is poetry?" "Oh, poetry. Poetry is bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go, dear Daniel." And she whispers as she flies off into the night. On Sunday, the sun wakes Daniel up, and he is happy when he remembers that it is Sunday. "Today is poetry in the park," says Daniel, "and I have a poem." Morning dew glistens. Crisp leaves crunch. There is a home with many windows in the old stone wall. Cool pools to dive in, sun-warmed sand to lie in. Singing at twilight when the day is done, bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go. On the way home, Daniel stops to watch the sunset reflect on the pond. "That looks like poetry to me," says Daniel. "To me too," says Dragonfly. May you find inspiration in the poems today, and may you find poetry wherever you go.